Welcome to Care Without Crisis, a video series by Vanguard Care Solutions.
Hi, I'm Dean Matthews, and I'm a caregiver advocate. I started Care Without Crisis to help adults and aging families be more prepared for senior care before it became a crisis. I noticed years ago when my friends started having children that there was no shortage of resources to help them raise their kids or even prepare for college. However, the same could not be said for senior care and caring for your parents. At this very moment, my siblings and I are in the thick of it, doing the best we can, preparing for and caring for our aging parents who are in their 90s. But the fact of the matter is we weren't ready. We just were prepared. And when I talk to my friends and contemporaries, they're even less prepared than we were. So Care Without Crisis is a way to help slow that whole process down, whether it be estate planning, whether it be health insurance, whether it be caregiving. We need time to plan for it. You know, with people living longer and healthcare advances and medical advances, it's not beyond the realm of possibility that you may need to care for your loved ones for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And that kind of financial burden on families can be unbearable. So this is a way for us to get ahead of it so that you're more informed, you're more prepared, and you're more supported. So thank you in advance for being part of the conversation.
And just want to kind of have a conversation with you about some things I know, some things I don't, but I kind of like you to talk through it and just be candid with me. So, you know, when a lot of times people think about caregiving, they often imagine kind of a short season, share responsibility. But your story kind of reflects something different, the way I see it. Very long term, around the clock care, kind of layered on top of work, family. I want to start by helping people understand what caregiving really looks like when no plan in place, no backup. You kind of stepped into it under some extraordinary circumstances, if I recall, raising your sister's children while also becoming the primary caregiver for your mother. So, what was your reality, like your day-to-day life during that time? Just kind of talk through that if you don't mind.
Okay, just some context. My mom had always suffered with rheumatoid arthritis. In 2006, she was notified by a doctor that she would no longer be able to live on her own. And just, she had made it for years with the rheumatoid arthritis, which is a very debilitating illness. Your hands, your body, all of that. And she had lived with that for about 30, maybe 35 years prior to that. I really didn't think that she would be in a position where she wouldn't be able to take care of herself because she had done it for so long. So when she got the news from her doctor, I'm married at the time in 2006. And so I spoke to my spouse about it, and we were cool with her coming to stay with us. But again, like you mentioned earlier, you think that it would be a limited time situation where maybe we would work something out where she would gradually begin to recover during that time. And the doctor was like, no, this is a situation where she would probably need some sort of assistance or care. I never really thought in that moment of placing her in a home. She and my dad both were people who took care of their parents. I can remember my grandmother coming to stay with me when I was younger. She stayed with us for maybe about 10 months, but my mother had a lot of siblings, so my grandma was able to move around. My dad was an only child, and my grandmother got sick and they placed her in a home. So I saw it from two different versions. I saw the caregiving aspect of what my mother gave to her mother and my father's mother being placed in a home, which was it was very difficult. So looking at the two, I had decided early on if something happened to my parents, I would probably take them in as opposed to looking for an assisted living situation. So that was my mindset going into it. My mother came to stay with me and my wife at the time. She stayed with us for about 9 months, but my spouse at the time, her opinion was, I can do this temporarily, but I'm not signing up for a life sentence to do this in terms of care. And she was just being honest, and I understood that. And so after about 9, 10 months, I sort of began to prepare myself. If we weren't able to take care of her long term, then it would probably be something that I would probably do on my own, which it changed my life in a lot of ways. So at that point, when she stayed with us for a while, her health wasn't getting better, and it looked like she was going to require some sort of assistance or some sort of long-term care. At the end of 2006, I left my situation, my marriage, and I moved over here into the Bowie area in the home that I reside in now. And I set it up so that I would be able to take care of my mom. My sister was deceased at that time, so I also had a guardianship of her daughter, who was 3 at the time. So I was just moving in, setting up the house. So I would be able to take care of my mother, Aaliyah, who was 3, and then my nephew, who was 11 at that time. So I just made room for him to come along if he wanted to, because he and his dad weren't really close at that time. So when I moved into the household, and my mom could move around, she could do some things on her own, but some things she needed assistance for. The kids at that age helped, but it was mostly a lot of everything became my responsibility.
What did that look like? Like, what it look like, sound like, feel like for you? I mean, and you say care, it was very
Yep.
hands-on. Was it hands-on from day one, or was it a gradual progression?
Yeah, it was gradual. It was gradual because my mom could move around. She could do things with the arthritis. The arthritis, again, it doesn't really get better.
Mhm.
So she had always, my mother was an early riser. She would get up early, take care of her hygiene. She could do things like, as opposed to cooking a lot, she could microwave things at that time. Once I got Aaliyah ready for school, I would take Aaliyah to school. She had the rest of the day basically to herself.
Okay.
She would get up at a certain time, but from what I recall, and remember, this was 18 years ago when I started. So a lot of it had to do with me just making sure we had food in the house. If she wanted to warm up food, she could do that. Her day was basically hers. She could take care of hygiene and things like that. And then when the kids came home, Adrian was old enough to help a little. So that's kind of what the first maybe 2, 3 years were like that. I cooked when I got in the evening. A lot of meals, like if I prepared breakfast for her in the morning, I'd prepare before I would leave for work. So I'm up at 6:30, 7 o'clock. And here's one of the things I just want to interject right here while I'm going through the timeline. Once you start this is not a 5-day or 4-day. This is a 7-day-a-week responsibility at that point. So some of the things I thought through, but other things kind of along the way, I adapted to because initially, like, I was cool with preparing food for myself, but it became okay, I prepare food for everybody every day, Saturdays and Sundays too. So I would just make sure before I went to work that if I was preparing her food or if she had a request, I would put it together before I left the house. And then the kids, Adrian, he of course put the bus to school, and I would drop Aaliyah off in the morning, which required me to get up to get her situated and provide breakfast or whatever at that point. So that's kind of the beginning. I didn't do as much for her in the initial stages. But again,
You were working a full-time job too, mind. So you
I,
were
yeah,
managing, if I recall correctly, you were managing working a full-time job,
yeah,
your hands-on care, bathing, feeding, mobility needs, medical
yeah,
needs. I mean, what did that? I mean, it had to take something out of you physically. I mean,
yeah.
but I shouldn't assume that, but I'm gonna imagine that. I can
No,
imagine
and I'll be totally transparent. When that became my responsibility, everything else was secondary at that point. Professionally, on my job, and you know where I work. In 2006, 2007, I was demoted on my job. I was in management, but my director at that time, he saw the change in how it was affecting me because it affected my marriage, number one, but it also affected me professionally. And so we made an agreement as opposed to termination. I was able to move into another position, which allowed me to continue with my responsibility at the house. But as far as advancing in my career, that was placed on hold. I was sort of placed in neutral for a number of years, and that was tough. But I knew what my priority was to begin the process of taking care of family, providing for my mother.
I was going to ask you emotionally, like what was happening to you internally that people may not have seen, like myself, for example. I mean, I think the people that know you
Right.
that may not quite understand what that experience was like for you. Emotionally, it just had to be a lot.
I always had a bird's eye of my mother dealing with her illness for a number of years. My mother wasn't a complainer about her situation. Part of the reason a lot of my friends didn't know was because my view of her was she didn't really complain or, openly sort of discuss that we're going through something and it's not really comfortable or advantageous at that point. So it's something I didn't really talk about a lot outside of the house, which probably would have helped if I did. I knew work was work. I'd go to work, I'd come home. I knew sort of like some days better than others. Most of the time, I knew what my responsibilities were in the evening. So I'd come home and do whatever I did. And there are times when I would come out and see you guys. Maybe I'd go to the bar for a little bit or come out for a ball game or something. But after a while, I kind of knew what my schedule was going to be like. And so I think for most caregivers and people like that, if you're giving that, a lot of it you internalize. It's not for me to discuss with everybody because everybody's not going to accept it. And some people are going to ask, well, where's your spouse? They're going to get in your business and ask how come they didn't, whatever, which I didn't. I think each person has a different cross to bear. So whatever it was that my spouse at the time thought, I didn't hold it against them. I just knew that my plate now for a while was going to be full. And I accepted that. I kind of knew what that was.
I think a lot of caregivers quietly carry that responsibility.
Yeah.
My question was going to, did you feel seen or supported at the time? But it sounds like you just kind of internalized it and, muscled through it.
Yeah.
And she pushed through it and you pushed through it.
Yeah.
A lot of folks, myself included, wasn't really aware until we got to know each other a little better and I learned a little bit more.
Right.
I'm going to talk a little bit about the cost of caregiving without support. Caregiving doesn't just affect your time; it affects everything. How did this level of responsibility impact you financially, or did it? Was it missed work, limited advancement? You talked about out-of-pocket expenses. Financially, did it impact you at all?
Yeah. During that time, I went from my spouse and I doing this, which I had some emotional support, some financial support. I had two siblings, my sister deceased, but my brother, that wasn't his mom.
Mhm.
So then it became, in my eyes, my sole responsibility. And so financially, there was a lot going on because my mother had to transition out of her home, which I'm remembering back that now my attention is somewhat divided between my household and overseeing her affairs with the house where we used to stay in Sea Pleasant. That was a challenge because my mother was trying to refinance her house at that time. And when she left her house, a lot of her paperwork, a lot of those things were still in the house. She tried to rent the house to a family member who somewhat took advantage of that. And, they stayed in the house almost like squatters for a while and then they moved on. But ultimately, my mother ended up losing her house. We weren't able to retain it. And financially, all I knew was it became my responsibility. And so I didn't, as far as like keeping records or anything like that, all I knew was I had extra expenses for the kids, although the kids, Aaliyah was receiving Social Security benefits because my sister was deceased. Adrian was in high school, so he got a little money from his dad. The lion's share of most of what, I did around here, my mom had some financial help, but a lot of it was just me. If you knew me during that time, I had a used truck that I had struggled to keep that on the road. But Other than that, my job afforded me the ability to be able to provide. It was just a stretch where, as you know, if you have friends talking about vacationing and going here and there, I know that's not going to be part of it. Again, I want to lead into this saying, you just don't know the time frame because you may think it may be a limited time frame,
Mhm.
which at that time I'm thinking I was 44, around 44 when it started. So that took me into, I was 52 towards the end of it. As far as what you do socially, what you're thinking in terms of maybe getting back into like relationships and things like that, all that's on hold. I had friendships, but you're bringing people or your friends into a situation where now they get to look into your life. We didn't know. I didn't notice what you were doing. I didn't know your mom was sick. Did you need help? And I have great friends. I have great friends. You guys, once they found out, some knew, some didn't. But when they found out, they were like, how can I help or assist you? I think, like most people, we're kind of like private people when it comes to certain things. And you don't feel like explaining all the time. You really don't. I could just sit at the bar and meet somebody and they're 10 minutes and they're like, well, how come this? And how come this? And why didn't this? And why didn't don't you these things? And I was like, I came to the bar to have a beer. I didn't come here to run my life story or to come here for anyone's pity.
Right.
And that's a part of it. It just became, this is kind of what we're going to do. I already made up in my mind. If this happens, these are my steps. Because I had seen it, I knew what the model looks like. I just said, okay, this is where we're going with this. And I'm just going to dig in.
I think you were the first of my peers to give me a picture to explicitly and graphically understand, oh, this is what it is. Like, this is what it takes. I think people, present company included, you just know things are getting taken care of. You don't fill in the blanks. Maybe you don't want to know. Maybe you don't want to see it.
Right.
You're the first one to tell me that, oh, this is what it is every day. I think a lot of folks, I will again, I speak for myself, you think you can do it for a while. You can do it for a week, maybe you can do it for 2 weeks. But
Right.
every day, when I understood what you were dealing with mentally, physically, I
Right.
just had to imagine was taking a toll on you. And I just don't think people, for lack of a better word, understand literally what it takes to get your hands dirty.
Right.
Physical
Right.
toll it takes on your body. You're not the one that's sick, but you can certainly get sick caring for a loved one.
Yeah. 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 The mental toll that it takes on you. I'm trying to think of where I'd taken off maybe 2 or 3 months from work around 2007. My mother had a knee replacement surgery. She was in and out of the hospital. Well, I'll be quite honest with you. I would be here during the daytime, and there are days when I would just sit around a bunch of beers and watch TV. I had to be mindful of too much alcohol, too much in my own thoughts mentally. I didn't initially get into the divorce process, but after 3 or 4 years, that was a thing because now we got to go back into that space, and it wasn't comfortable. The kids are growing, the kids want to know certain things. So mentally, it's a challenge. And my personality is, I'll probably internalize it. I'll raise my hand if I need something, but I mean, heck, I got to be on a 9 or 10 before I raise my hand, and that's just how I'm wired.
Let me ask you, if you had to sum it up,
Hmm.
what was the hardest part of the caregiving without a clear plan of support in place? I mean, was it exhaustion, isolation? I mean, you somewhat sounds like you touched on all of it. Were you fearful of making mistakes or
Right.
carrying everything alone? What was the most difficult part or difficult parts?
This is a combination of all those things you mentioned. I'm a faith-based person, so I have a lot of faith in things, being optimistic that things are going to work out. Did I feel isolated? Sure. I probably had my bouts with being a little bit, I'm not a really depressive type, but I probably had my time because it seemed like, just like in the word Job, I lost a lot during that time. And so sitting around just wallowing in pity is not really my makeup. But I can't say that I didn't have those. As a caregiver, you're going to have those times. You're going to question yourself. You're going to doubt that you made the right move. I probably sat and thought a lot of days, how would it be different if my ex would have continued that path with me? Because I thought in my mind, I probably would have done the same thing for my ex had it been role reversed. So the most difficult part was the isolation piece of how long, what am I going to do if I go into like 8 to 10 years of this? Because I really didn't know at that time how long it's going to be. I just knew that this is kind of what I signed up for, and I've seen other people do it. I have close friends who they've done this, and as not only my family members, but watching some friends who went through it, watching them, it's like, wow, that's kind of a long stretch. And what would I do when everything is on you? Because most everybody else that I know have siblings that may be able to help. And it was just me. And so I was like, okay, in one aspect, that could be a good thing because I'm a sort of orderly person. If I get it organized and schedule it, I can probably do this for a while. But then you mentioned the part of being somewhat isolated and just you doing this. And so when I felt like that, I had just some family members that I would call every now and then if I needed a break from it and say, hey, I want to go out for the evening. I was meeting people at that time and I was talking with one lady and I told her, you know what? It would be nice for somebody to cook me a meal because those things I did every day. You know, I'd get up and cook. I come in the evening and cook. If I found somebody that would just voluntarily cook me a meal without me asking, I would be, I would be head over heels because, you got all these services, DoorDash and all this stuff. I don't know if I had that then. And that probably would have helped, but it was mostly me. You come home, you prepare food. You come home, you clean up. You come home, you do these things. I don't know if anyone can really anticipate all of those things when they get into it. I think if you're a day-to-day, these are the activities that I need to do. That's kind of the way I viewed it. I didn't look at one thing like, wow, I don't know how to cook, how I'm gonna do this. No, I knew how to cook. I knew how to manage the house. It was just managing um, my mom and keeping her comfortable, which was a very big thing for me, just keeping her comfortable. Because after about maybe 4 or 5 years, there are days where I got frustrated. After years, it's a lot, man, and I'm kind of frustrated with this. And I would read either in the Bible or other books of faith that I was reading. While you're doing this, you have to understand that one day it could potentially be you, right? And so knowing that you really have to work to take care of yourself, and not that my mother didn't, but now it's a reflection of what this could be down the road if you don't take care of certain things. I begin to think long term, what is it going to look like for me? And if I'm not married, will I be able to take care of me? Or will the kids around me be able to do that? All those things I begin to question. There's a dignity to growing old gracefully that everybody kind of wants to experience in their golden years. My mother had worked and retired from her job for a long time. She ran a nursery for a long time. But when I looked at her life, there was a dignity, there was an honor that other people extended to her that I didn't want to diminish because of where we were at that time. I had to separate my frustration from the care that I was giving.
I don't think the problem isn't love or willingness,
Right.
caregivers every day. I mean, I think the problem is that families are navigating really complex care alone, often in crisis without support or
Right.
community like advocacy. So I think that's why we're kind of planning and why advocacy matters, why we're doing this. When families have someone to help them navigate the experience, shift from crisis to some kind of supported decision making.
Right.
I'm not going to take any much more of your time. I just wanted to say thank you. Your story really kind of represents that of many caregivers who give it everything every day, just do it quietly. So if someone is watching this and sees something in the experience they want to share, please reach out, let me know. You don't have to do this alone. Caregiving doesn't have to be a do it by yourself thing.
Right.
Although a lot of people choose that's their path. But once again, I just want to say thank you. I appreciate your time.
Yeah.
Appreciate your candor.
Let me say this real briefly in closing.
Sure.
Anyone watching or just hearing this, there are different stages for everyone's life. what I didn't anticipate along the way, I think a lot of people nowadays are probably giving more attention to how they're going to be able to help their parents or grandparents or other people in that situation, which is a good thing. I think it's important for people to talk and share information. And I think that's part of what my testimony is kind of now. There's so much information now are sharing either online in videos or with other people who've gone through these things. I want to be a person that can help and aid and just give advice because again, my dad, on the one hand, my dad is 87 years old and he's still moving around and doing okay. You know what I mean? And it doesn't have to be for everyone whose situation to be as long term. Some people may get sick for a while and they'll come out of that.
Yeah.
I'm always here as a resource.
I'll make sure I get in touch with you, brother. I appreciate you.
Thank you for joining us. Are you ready for a plan? Contact us today for your personalized care assessment. Get started online at any time at www.vanguardcaresolutions.com.